Ragnar Lothbrok, legendary Viking warrior and king of the Danes, has gone down in history for many reasons. But perhaps his greatest claim to fame is being the father of Ivar the Boneless, one of the most infamous Vikings of all time. Or is he? Welcome to the channel. And today we are answering the extraordinary question, did Ragnar Lothbrok really have a son named Ivar the Boneless? Now, before we get into it, and if you want to know more about where our Vikings documentaries get their inspiration from, make sure to stay tuned, because at the end of the video, we will be giving away 3 Hrafen bundles, each containing their book, so don't miss out on this chance to win. Let's begin. In the popular imagination, Ivar the Boneless is remembered as the son of Ragnar Lothbrok and Aslaug. After the death of King Ella of Northumbria, England, Ivar, having taken with them unprecedented plunder and renown. We are told that he was born lame, which were apparently so deformed that they prevented him from wielding a traditional shield. Instead, he fought left-handed, gripping his shield with his teeth. It also resulted in his exclusion from the ruling elite, with the throne passing instead to his elder brother Halfdan. As mentioned, the primary source for what we know of Ivar is the Orkneyinga saga. These sources tell a somewhat different tale from the Norse ones, although there is some overlap. For example, while the sagas attribute Ivar's lameness to a congenital condition, regardless, both traditions agree that Ivar was a fierce fighter who was nevertheless able to excel in other areas, such as planning military campaigns, intimidating opponents, and rallying his troops. While the tales of Ivar the Boneless may sound like an epic poem straight out of Tolkien's Middle-earth, the truth is likely far less fantastical. The first is the sources themselves, making them unreliable sources for anything more than broad strokes of the history of the period. Secondly, and perhaps more importantly, no archaeological evidence exists to support the saga's version of events. In fact, the few pieces of evidence we do have contradict several key points. First off, the identity of Ivar's father is called into question by the lack of any contemporary evidence linking Ragnar Lothbrok to Ivar. The Tale of Ragnar's Family, a saga written by Snorri Sturluson. By this point, over 300 years had passed since the supposed lifetime of Ragnar. Additionally, while Ragnar Lothbrok is described in the Tale of Ragnar's Family as having been killed by King Ella, implying that Ragnar himself was still alive. And if that is true, how could he have fathered a son with Aslaug during this time? Speaking of Aslaug, her character is introduced in the Orkneyinga saga as the daughter of the king of the Huns, Attila the Hun. However, the timeline provided by the saga itself creates a significant problem. Since Attila died in 453 AD and Ragnar supposedly lived from 750 to 800 AD, it would mean that Aslaug was born when she was in her late teens, a detail never mentioned in any other contemporary source. Furthermore, her inclusion in the narrative serves no historical purpose and appears to be nothing more than a literary device used to add color and exoticism to the story. This detail is likely a result of a misunderstanding between the Norse and the Byzantine writers. You see, there is a brief mention of the Huns in the Norse sources, but it refers to a people called the Chersoni, who lived on the eastern coast of the Black Sea, not to be confused with the Western Huns. It is possible that the Norsemen confused the latter group with the former, and that the misidentification then led to the inclusion of Attila in the story. But perhaps the greatest stumbling block for historians is the very concept of a boneless Viking. A warrior without the ability to use his limbs effectively would have been little more than a liability on the battlefield, especially during the 9th century when Viking warfare was at its height. The sagas attempt to explain this limitation by stating that Ivar was either born with physical deformities or punished for refusing to convert to Christianity, neither of which is supported by the evidence. Although physical disabilities were not uncommon, lame warriors were typically relegated to non-combat roles such as hunting or fishing. In fact, the only way an individual like Ivar could hope to survive on a Viking raid, let alone lead an army, would be to rely on the mercy of his comrades. And given the brutal realities of Viking warfare, it is highly unlikely that any warrior, no matter how skilled, would willingly allow such a person onto his ship. With all that being said, however, it is worth noting that no evidence has been uncovered that outright disproves the existence of Ivar the Boneless. It is entirely possible that he was a real person who accomplished many great deeds during his lifetime. Unfortunately, the truth is that much of what we know or think we know about the Vikings is based on myths and legends perpetuated by writers centuries after the fact, often with little regard for accuracy. One theory is that the stories of Ivar the Boneless are a case of historical memory failing to preserve. That is to say that over the course of several generations, the details of Ivar's life became distorted or even fabricated as they were passed down through oral tradition before finally being written down. Another possibility is that the sagas are simply a product of 13th century Icelandic literature, which often drew upon older sources while adding new elements to make the stories more entertaining. In fact, Snorri Sturluson, the author of the tale of Ragnar's family, was known for embellishing his narratives to such an extent that they were considered more legend than history. In the end, we may never know for sure what truly happened to Ivar the Boneless. But that doesn't stop us from learning from the past and working towards a better future. And what better way to do that than by supporting educational content like ours, which wouldn't be possible without the help of our patrons. So if you too want to support us, then check out the links in the description. And until next time, remember to stay curious. And now it's time for the giveaway. 3 lucky viewers from anywhere in the world will receive a Raffin bundle, each containing their book, The World of the Vikings, and their documentary series, The Complete Viking. To enter, all you have to do is like this video and leave a comment below telling us what you would do if you had a day in the life of a Viking. Please make sure that your YouTube account is linked to a Google account with an active email address. If you do not have a YouTube account linked to a Google account with an active email address, unfortunately, we won't be able to contact you if you win. All 3 winners will be notified via the email address associated with their Google account. Please check your spam folder if you don't see a notification from us within a week of the video's release date. And please note that if any winner does not respond to our email within 48 hours, a new winner will be selected in their place. We will not share any of your personal information with anyone. Thank you all so much for watching, and a huge thank you to Riffin for sponsoring this video. Now go forth and be legendary.